For a buck or two, would you allow a company to brand your vehicle? It's a new concept in advertising, and we're going to explore it in some detail. We'll also look at the so-called township super rich and how brands should be interacting with them. And we'll talk about the morals and ethics of casino advertising. Welcome, and let's get started. Let's see if you agree with this premise. Communication is constantly becoming smaller as it heads irrevocably to the small screen, you know, that one that we hold in our hands. So how is advertising rising to this challenge? Recently launched is a new mobile-only ad agency called 7 Different Kinds of Smoke. It's done some interesting work for the big KFC brand, and founding partner Ryan Gandalf van Jaarsveld joins us. Welcome, thank you very much for joining us. Your contention then, Ryan, is that advertising with great speed is migrating to mobile phones. Is that what you say?
Absolutely, yes. We look at the numbers. 38 million people have a cell phone. 70%, more than 70% are LSM 1 to 5. More than 35% are older than 35, which are interesting numbers based on what it looked like sort of a couple of years ago. And 58% used internet on their cell phone. That's some big numbers. But it's not the numbers that's been the problem. Everyone understood the numbers. It's actually making the channel work and delivering results for brands via this channel.
All right, before we talk about how to make it work,
Sure.
Do brands themselves understand the power and the influence of what people are actually holding in their hands?
Definitely. I think that brands and agencies have all had an awareness of mobile, and it hasn't gone away. You know, it's certainly getting bigger as the devices are getting better, technology is getting stronger. But I think the problem is that where brands have dabbled, they have not seen the kind of results they wanted for their spend, and I think there's some fear in getting into the space because of that.
What are they scared of, do you think?
I think results. I think a lot of, in the early days, a lot of guys came into the space and went to brands and had these great ideas. Not enough research was done into the idea. A lot of the times it was led by techies, so it was very, very technical for the consumer and for the campaign. And in the end of the day, it didn't deliver results the brand was looking for.
But you're suggesting that is changing and changing very quickly. In what way?
When we started 7 Different Kinds of Smoke, our concept was to try and bring a creative mind into the space that has a traditional understanding of advertising. Because anybody who's creating concepts needs to understand how advertising works. These guys study, they spend a lot of time working for ad agencies, they've gone through the process, they've earned their stripes. At the same time, a techie person who's a developer or a systems architect has to understand their slice of the pie as well. One cannot necessarily handle both roles, you see. So I think that the skilled creative needs to handle the ideas, and the skilled techie needs to handle the development, and marrying the two together provides campaigns that are going to work because consumers want to engage with them.
I made the point, Ryan, in my introduction that simply brands are having to go smaller, but the more you talk to me, I'm sensing that's not really the case. So what is the difference then between a traditional, as we know it, above-the-line advertising campaign and something that I'm going to find on my mobile phone, both from a strategic and from a creative perspective?
Good question. I think I'll answer the second part first. Yeah. From a creative perspective, obviously it's a small screen, okay, so everything changes, and of course different devices.
What changes?
Okay, so videos change. We do full streaming video on mobile phones, right? So you have to render the videos out for different size handsets. You have to understand how that mobile phone is going to play those videos. You also have to understand the creative on the cell phone screen, because different screens have different sizes. Yeah. So there's that element of it. The creative obviously is for a small screen. So if you're doing full video production, you're not producing something for TV. So the shot's specific, the whole thing is done specifically for mobile. From a strategic point of view, I think that you want to find mobile, the best place mobile will fit in is as an integrated part of a traditional advertising campaign. So if brands really, really want to play well in the mobile space or play well in the new media space, they must have an integrated approach. So above the line has a place, below the line has a place, online has a place, mobile has a place, social networking has a place, and everything must be according to the golden thread the brand is trying to portray to the consumer.
To what extent are you hampered by technology? I mean, the swear word must be, in your particular space, buffering.
Buffering. Yeah. That's a very good question, absolutely. I think that you'll find the video playing depends on your network signal. However, things have improved a lot in the last 5 years, and they are improving on a daily basis. Cell phones are getting smarter as well. We look at iPhones, we look at the smartphones in terms of how they render videos and how they play them and how they buffer. And of course, the streaming technology we use handles that quite well in terms of the buffering. And also the videos are made specifically for handsets, so they're not 1 meg or 2 megs big. They're they can actually be played on the
Well,
cell phone.
let's pull all of this thinking together for the work that you did for KFC along with the cricketer A.B. de Villiers.
That's right, yeah.
What did you do?
All right, so we approached KFC as a sponsor of the Cricket World Cup, and they had A.B. de Villiers as a sponsor partner. And we decided the idea was to allow consumers to play cricket against A.B. de Villiers on their phone. Quite an interesting idea, because any fan of A.B. de Villiers would never have the opportunity of interacting with A.B. de Villiers in that way. Okay, so we had to get a cast, we had to get a crew. We got a full Super Sport crew. We shot the thing in Cinderville, Pretoria. We used Light Productions and Spaghetti Inc., who put the whole thing together. And for an entire day, we spent some time with A.B. de Villiers going through different shots. All right, we used pencil cams to create the idea of the bowler's arm coming over his shoulder. So the whole thing was done in first person. And A.B. had various outcomes like a 4 and a 6, LBW, going out, getting caught. It was really cool. We got Pommy and Bangwa to do the voiceovers, okay? Put everything together, put onto our back end, rendered the videos out for 14,000 different phones, okay? And then served onto a Mobi site. So you'd log on, choose your length, choose your line, and then there'd be different outcomes that happened based on that. And you either get them out, hit you for a 4, hit you for a 6, different outcomes.
And the incentive was what? They could win something.
All right, absolutely, yes, absolutely. So the first phase of the campaign, they could basically just unlock AB and they could get random prizes. All right. The second phase of the campaign, there were no prizes. The third phase, you could win an 89 Rand KFC meal voucher a day, which is hardly anything, but it was still nice to get the consumer in store, and a 5,000 Rand cash prize at the end of the campaign.
I sense this is where advertising communication is moving. Gandalf van Jaarsveld, thank you very much for joining us from one of the most unusually named agencies, 7 different kinds of smoke. Your thoughts on Facebook and on Twitter, and coming up on the programme, our view on the big FNB national anthem ad. All right, let's review some new work now, and a new ad from First National Bank has South Africans talking. It depicts a young girl singing the national anthem to a packed FNB stadium. Towards the end, she forgets the words. After a couple of anxious moments of silence, the 80,000-odd spectators join in helping her finish the anthem. Says the bank, it's a simple idea with a bold message. Where there's help, there is a way. Notes the bank's chief executive, Michael Jordan, the current controversy over the Shoot the Boer song shows how a song can distance people from one another. The bank says it wants to demonstrate also with a song how friendly and cooperative South Africans are as a nation. Now, I'm not entirely convinced about this ad. It comes from the Metropolitan Republic ad agency. It certainly has a powerful narrative. It is beautifully shot and crafted. But here's the thinking. Should a bank be playing this type of unifying role that has risky political overtones? In a different incarnation a long time ago, the brand has gone there before with negative consequences.
And united we shall stand. Let us
I'm also a little uncomfortable about the national anthem being used for commercial purposes, however cute and however well-intentioned. There are certain things, I think, that are sacrosanct when it comes to commercial speech, and this is one of them. So we're going to say, reluctantly, oh no to this ad. Let's move on. The face of township dwellers is changing dramatically according to the 2nd annual Township Insights Research. It's conducted by the Fushizi agency on 500 township dwellers, who I'm told are in the so-called upper LSM demographic. This is also goldmine stuff for brands who need to engage with these dynamic consumers. Let's talk about it. Joining us now is Lebo Motsogoa, who is a director of Fushizi. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us. First of all, this super rich category that you talk about, what is that?
Well, basically, what we tend to pick up is that the people who stay in the townships, it's not only the people who are actually struggling. They're actually people who choose to stay in the townships, and those people are very rich. Those are the people who basically, some of them, they've got a 9-to-5, but on the side they sell, they've got a liquor store, they own a couple of taxis, they've got a convenience store in the townships. So all that money is the money that comes towards their pockets. Then when we actually compare it between the ones in Gauteng and the one actually in KZN, the ones in KZN have more money simply because obviously they've got farms, they own a couple of lands there.
You're also suggesting that the buying habits of this group is change, or it has changed and
Has
is
changed.
changing all the time?
Has changed.
In what way?
Their hobbies are different. The things that they buy, some of the questions we ask them in terms of our discussion guide with things like, what are the things that you're buying now that black people never used to buy? Some of the things, interestingly, is like I have whiskey for visitors now. So any visitor who just comes, there's always a whiskey. It's not that I have to wait for a special visitor. You know, your Johnny Walkers, your Clanvedek and so forth. Black folks in that same group, they say we buy dog food for our dogs now. We're no longer just giving them leftovers. We go to KZN or some of these other provinces that we went into, we found that people have got air conditioners in their homes. But what you got to remember, Jeremy, is that, and the marketers out there, is that these folks are saying, I don't have to go to the suburbs to create that environment. I can create it here. We've got the money. But the problem is that right now we're still being considered emerging. 10 years later, come on, at some point we got to emerge.
So are you suggesting the label emerging is dead?
The emerging, you're always going to have emerging. You're always going to have newcomers. You're always going to have the guys who are up and coming. But at some point you do have the emerged. People who are loaded, people who have money. And interestingly, they don't wait for a brand to come to them.
So, Lebo, if brands are not getting this right, as you're suggesting, is there a danger of brand resentment creeping in here? That people say, well, you're not talking my language, you're not engaging with me in the way that I want to be engaged, therefore I'm not going to use you.
Yes.
Because, you know, the power of my wallet is going to work.
Yes. But it also depends what type of the product you're talking at, you know. There are certain things that these guys are saying, I want to remain exclusive. You know, you start now putting certain labels that I wear and you start making an ad out of them, then we have a problem. Then it becomes mass market. I don't want to be part of the mass market on certain things. But on certain aspirational things that you're still talking to me down. And that's the problem that I'm picking up when I look at in terms of the type of communication these people are looking for. Let me give you an example. What are the other things that black people are buying that they never used to buy? A simple thing like an air freshener. An air freshener. Who's talking to us about air fresheners? Our bathrooms or our toilets have been renovated, but who's actually talking to us?
A fair point, but I mean, how do you talk differently about an air freshener in a township compared to the suburbs? I mean, an air freshener is an air freshener.
Well, because...
It does the same job.
Well, the bathrooms don't do the same job.
Yeah.
We don't do the same job. Me is that if I have my house there as an emerged market, people, if my neighbor come past, can I use your bathroom? I allow them. In the suburbs, you'll never do that. You'll never. So the point is the relationships are different. So you can't take what has worked for the so-called black image market in the suburbs and then say, no, it's the same thing. Because remember, our aspirations are different. Impulse buying in this market is also different. You know,
In what way is impulse buying different?
Well, in this case, for example, is friends play a role in terms of some of the things that people do. Bargains play a role. These guys, some of the questions we asked them was like, where is the place? We call it Iskoti. Iskoti, well, direct translation, it's a hole. But in popular culture, in terms of black popular culture, it's basically where do you buy things that no one knows where you buy them. And they were telling us, they gave us lists of all these places. Brands are not there. No marketer is putting their billboards there. No marketer is there to say, hey guys, look, I see that you're buying these rims at this place. You know, and you're getting them at the bargain. But can I talk to you about car insurance? You know, it's also a bargain. But no one is talking to them in that way. What is it they're doing? They're putting billboards, they're putting TVs, they're putting the normal stuff that's like, not talking to me, man.
You've got to come back and visit us, and FMC Brands, you've got to listen to this man, Lebo Motsekgo, who's a director of the Fushizi agency. Let's move on, and using privately owned vehicles is yet another new advertising platform. So the question is, would you sell space on your car to a brand for a few extra bucks? And what value and risk possibly to the brand? Let's say, for instance, you're caught drunk driving in a car sponsored by a liquor company. The reputation fallout could be dangerous. Pieter Groenewald is Chief Executive Officer of brandyourcar.com, and he joined us a little earlier on the program. First question, obviously, how does it work?
Well, effectively, there's two parts, Jeremy. One, you've got the .com element to vehicle branding. So it allows essentially all forms of transit media is currently being branded. You look at buses, taxis, trains, whatever. So what we've just done on the upper LSMs, we allow them to go and register on a database, complete a questionnaire, so we know quite a bit about your lifestyle. And then we go to advertisers and match up the profile of the individuals who subscribe to our database to their objectives. And once we've got a match, we actually just physically applicate those cars and get the branding to go out and become part of their lifestyles.
Does it suit a particular type of brand, I wonder?
It's for brands that's currently in the out-of-home space. So if you've got an outdoor strategy, it will work for you. it just allows you to become a lot more tactical in this regard. So you can choose specific geographical areas, psychographic of individuals, and even from a demographic point of view.
How do you choose the driver and the car to make sure that that particular property that the brand owns is going to be a good brand ambassador?
Okay, for instance, we've got various search engines in our database. So if you say to me, I'm looking for a female with small kids in primary school in that specific area, say Pretoria East, for instance, I'll go into the database and go and select on that basis. I normally find more cars than what I actually need for the campaign, and then a further fine-tuning is going down into the database. At the end of the day, we approach then these car owners and invite them to participate. So if someone doesn't feel comfortable with the brand, they'll pull out at that stage and you'll go to the next person on the list.
They're paid, of course.
At the end of the month, we get paid for the exposure, the brand pays us for the exposure, and a large portion of that money goes back to the individual.
Obviously, you're going to look for a car, Peter, that's in reasonably good condition, I would imagine. It's got to fit in with the architecture and the values of that brand, surely.
No, for sure. We've got different categories of cars. So you've got entry-level cars, you go right up to your more prestige cars. And what we do is we've got checks and balances in place. So photos get sent to us. If there's a wheel cap missing or scratch on the car, that automatically disqualifies the individual from participating.
How creative can you get with a concept like this? Or is it simply you want the name of the brand and maybe the website or telephone number?
I think traditionally that's what small businesses done. They just put their name and website on it. What we've now done is we've got creative guys, and you can be very creative. You've got a lot of space. The car lends itself to very creative executions. We've done some stuff where certain creative is suitable to female drivers, to male drivers. Now that's kind of thing that you don't ordinarily get in the out-of-home space, and that you can do. And we actually challenge brands to make it really innovative, because that makes it stand out on the roads. And
Peter Groenewald, I can't but help ask myself what is next in terms of the space in out-of-home. Where is the final frontier here? Or as far as you guys are concerned, is every bit of space outside now up for grabs?
Well, I think as the out-of-home guys generally push the envelope a lot. But, I mean, to brand private cars is just an extension of branding other forms of transport. The difference is, though, the .com element. I think very few guys have explored to that extent, where you've put through lifestyle matching and that kind of thing. So.
Talking to us earlier, Chief Executive Officer of brandyourcar.com. Well, is it a good or a lame idea? Let us know on Facebook or on Twitter, and here are the details. Right, let's move from branded cars now to the gaming industry, and you may or may not have seen the new Monte Casino television ad and outdoor hoarding. A little about gambling and how we all do it, sometimes without realizing what exactly is riding on our decision. The ad was developed by the agency Halo and the strategy by Interbrand Samson, and the campaign, I would suggest to you, raises some very interesting questions about the morals and ethics of casino advertising. With us now is Chris Collar of Interbrand Samson, along with Dean Olshek, Creative Director at Halo. To both of you, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us. Chris, to you first. The premise is we all gamble in life, whether we like it or not. Flesh that out for me.
Well, you know, strategically, when we were faced with the brief of we want to normalize gaming and make it acceptable for society, it was a massive challenge for us. Where did we start? This wasn't going to be a creative campaign with lots of glitz and glamour. We needed to really understand the human insight and come to terms firstly with the moral dilemma of, is it normal to game? And for us, where we went with that was looking at how life's a gamble every day. That risk, that feel-alive moment, that exhilaration, that sort of clinched fists feeling of what is about to happen. That is what we try to cue in from the human insight perspective.
All right, Dean, how do you draw balance then between a creative execution, because Monte Casino has got one thing in mind, and that's to get more footfall into the casino, but on the other hand, you also have to toe that responsible line that Chris has just referred to. Creatively, that's a fairly difficult challenge.
It's something we had to come to terms with as a creative agency. You know, we knew that to do this, we really had to get buy-in. So we did a lot of research on that. You know, we wanted to understand the moral implications of doing something like this. And so we spent a lot of time researching, and we had the briefing for about a year before it actually went on to air. And a lot of that time was spent asking those difficult questions back to clients. You know, why is this okay? What are the reasons? And You know, they're a blue chip company and listed on the stock exchange, and they don't want any kind of problem gamblers or addictive behavior on their floor. And you know, so once we got around that and bought into that, we were able to really explore this credibly.
Who's the campaign aimed at, do you think?
Well, from a target market, we identified a couple of sectors. One would be the current gamers, to try to normalize it with them. You know, there was an insight where...
When you say normalize it, what are you saying?
We're trying to make the experience of gaming a fun and acceptable form of entertainment. And you know, too often, so the current gamers would sit at a dinner party, half of them game, but feel uncomfortable to discuss it with their friends and family. So what we're trying to do is firstly target them and allow for that acceptance to occur, so that it's a discussed topic. And then obviously we're looking at the non-gamers and trying to get them to buy in to the fact that gaming is okay, that it's not irresponsible, that it's not associated with some of the other deadly sins, and make it an acceptable form of entertainment.
Dean, is it difficult to get that thought, that strategic thought, that insight, and then create a tonality around that?
It was quite a different process we went through, because I think the strategy that actually came out was the feel alive moment, the insight. It's not about winning or losing. It's the moment before that. You know, I always use the example of this feeling.
But I mean, it is about winning and losing. I mean, that's what gambling's about, surely.
If you think about, if you go back to the 1999 Cricket World Cup, Alan Donald was run out. And
do we have to? Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah.
I think everyone has a memory associated to that. But it's, even though we lost, everyone can remember the feeling that they had at that point. And I think it's still a special moment for a lot of South Africans, because it's so on top of mind, as opposed to other sporting events which might have faded away if we've won, whether we had won or lost. And I think that's the moment we try to key into from the strategic point of view, showing life as everyday, the gambles we do every day. That was just the creative execution of that strategy.
You asked that question of, it's surely about winning or losing. Our insight was that it's not about winning or losing. It's about the experience and the gaming, experiencing the enjoyment of the game itself. And that's where we needed to try and stay away
Chris
from.
Collar, I take the point. I understand the strategy. But there's also a responsibility. It's a pleasure, by the way. There's also a responsibility, having created this normal tone around gambling. How do you sustain that? Because if the ad works, you're going to get a lot more people in. You could create, surely, a lot more problem gamblers. In many ways, the follow-up to the campaign, I would suggest to you, is even more important than the original premise. Do you agree
more, Jeremy? And if we had Nolene Bruton sitting here with us, that's our next stage in the campaign. And I think I said it earlier, it's really important that this isn't a flash-in-the-pan TVC, but part of a long-term strategy. How do you prevent problem gaming is obviously a part of the business imperative, but it's also important that we take cognizance of the fact that this has got a long-term strategy in creating more acceptable.
Dean, in the short term, do you have a sense of how this is working at this point?
We've obviously been monitoring the response. It's been accepted, which has been amazing. What I like about the creative is that there's a moment for everyone in there. There's something that anyone can relate to.
Will you set a defined measurability? Does this have to achieve something, or is it simply about a perception change?
It's about a perception change. Measurability is an important part in any terms of communication. We didn't necessarily define those metrics up front, but we rather took on the bolder challenge of changing the perception. You know, we looked at campaigns like...
in many ways, you're doing this for other casino groups as well, aren't you?
And you know, that was the conversation that Nolene and I were having a lot of the time, is that you know, should everybody be contributing to the expense of the campaign, because we are doing an industry job. And we were happy to do that as Monte Casino, as Soko Sun, being the forerunners in changing the perceptions around gaming.
Or you could just send an invoice out to everybody else. I appreciate the insight. It's an interesting topic, and thank you very much for joining us. Chris Collar there, a senior partner at Interbrand Samson, along with Dean Olshek from the agency Halo. Next week, let me tell you this, with a smile and a suntan, Mags on Media in the south of France at the Cannes Advertising Festival. You can follow us daily on Facebook and on Twitter. And until then, I will say goodbye to you. Thank you for watching.